All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Wise, Gifted, and Black, a show where we educate and celebrate Black culture. Now, when we talk about Black culture, there is, when I moved to Melbourne in Australia, um, through friends, I bumped into someone um, that I'm going to introduce in a second, who, from the moment I met her and we started talking, she introduced me to herself. And when I found out she was a singer, it blew my mind. And then I found out more about her backstory, and it was something that always stayed with me. And that is the reason that me starting this podcast. She was one of the guests that I really wanted to get on my show. So without further ado, from the group, the trio, the Black Sisters, ladies and gentlemen, Petra. Petra, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, thank you.
Perfect.
Very happy to be on your podcast.
Thank you. Welcome to Wise, Gifted, and Black.
Yeah.
Sorry that I'm using black because I know you guys got black in your title for your group as well, but um, it's like that chronic song, that they never told us black is beautiful. This
Oh,
is the
that's
thing.
it.
And that's the message that we need to keep sending out there. And that's the
That's
reason
it.
why a show like this exists, is because
Absolutely. Black sisters, black gifted and wise, is it? Or wise, gifted,
why
and
is
black?
gifted and black. Yeah. Yeah, so I really want to ask you basically how you guys doing, how the Black Sisters, the trio, how's the band doing right now with all this COVID craziness happening?
Oh, well, as you know, we're I've got two older siblings,
Yeah.
Leah and Rosa, and they're also part of the Black Sisters. And although we are collectively in a band together, we also have our own journeys, our own paths, our own careers.
Yeah.
Um, at this stage with the Black Sisters, we're still here. Um, we all have our own individual projects going as well.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. So
Yeah.
at the moment, especially with COVID and things slowing down like that, some of us are staying at home working, like myself.
Yeah.
But our hearts are always there for the music and for our people.
Yeah, because I know prior to this year, you guys were out performing all the time and stuff like that. I mean, I know it's been a bit of a challenge for you guys just to, okay, pause, no more performing and stuff like that for all musicians,
Yeah.
not only you guys.
Well, I think first and foremost, we're mothers as well. And
Exactly.
so we have had, we've been completely blessed to be able to travel, tour many places of the world over the last 10 years. And I think for a lot of us, well, for the three of us, we all kind of decided that 2020, we wanted to kind of just get ourselves in a good position in life with work and have a good balance for our children as they're getting older as well.
Yeah.
And as I said, music will always be there. But at this point in our lives at the moment, we're just trying to focus as individuals on our children and our families and just building ourselves in that way as well. Of course, we will always do music. Yeah, but things are good. Things are good despite everything going on with COVID and everything.
Yeah. And look, music is in your DNA, which we are going to get into
Mm.
basically.
Yeah,
The Black Sisters, you guys, and you the middle sister.
I'm the baby
You're the
sister.
baby sister.
Yeah.
I always think you're the middle sister for some reason. I always think, because I know all Leah and Rosa, and I always think Rosa is the
The
younger, but
youngest.
you the
Yeah,
youngest.
she gets that all the time.
Yeah,
I'm the
yeah,
youngest, actually.
yeah. um, I think she is very young at heart. That's probably why.
Yeah, that
Um,
is exactly it.
that's exactly it. And look, I want to get into the Black Sisters and how you guys were formed, but the
Mm,
history of the Black Sisters cannot be ignored because there is such a strong history behind it. And
mm,
that originates from the story that you once told me about your father. Now, am I getting your surname right? Augustine Rumaro Roran? Did I
Rumaropen.
Rumaropen? You
Yeah.
say it much more better than I do. um,
August, his name was basically his name's Augustinus Rumaropen, but everyone referred to him as August.
as August, yeah, and he was
August.
the lead guitarist and the main vocalist.
Yeah, lead
In the
singer and
band.
lead guitarist of the Black Brothers.
Yeah, yeah. So just give us a bit of a, and I wanted to find out from you what's the history of the band itself. I mean, how did they form? Because they are from Jayapura.
So it's a very, 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 I'll try and make it as short and simple as I could make it. But
Look, we've got time. Go for it.
yeah, well, so the Black Brothers band was created for a purpose. I can tell you that much.
Yes.
For a purpose, and there was a mission behind it all. So the creator of the Black Brothers, my uncle, Andy Amiseba,
Mhm.
who sadly actually just passed away this year.
This year, yes.
Yeah, just back in February, actually in Canberra with all his children and grandchildren around.
Wow.
He was a young, you could call him an entrepreneur, businessman, growing up in Jaipura with a father that was one of the very first West Papuan parliamentarians, so to
Wow.
speak, within the government. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So he had
at
like a
that
bit of a
point,
political. He had like a lot of political knowledge in him.
yes, that's right. So honestly, he was a very good businessman and he did start a lot of businesses up within West Papua and quite wealthy also at the time. But he did really give all that up to start this mission for the struggle of West Papua, the Free West Papua movement. So at
Wow.
that time, Indonesia had basically invaded West Papua. And
what years are we talking about here at this point?
so we're talking the 60s.
You're right.
So early 60s, and then towards the late 60s, we had what we called a referendum.
Yeah, I read about this. So basically,
So
this is the Dutch were running West Papua, if I, or they were the
yes, so yes, we were actually a Dutch colony,
yeah.
and the Dutch set us up for our independence. We had a national anthem, a flag, a currency, and when we were in that transition phase of the Dutch leaving and us being ready for our independence, that's when Indonesia came in. Indonesia literally came in and invaded. My parents have told me the story because they were still, they were young, but they were there to see it, to witness it, and they literally came in
Apparently there,
ships and.
because apparently there was only like 1,000 people who were there to vote, and they were quite they were like
That's right.
quite scared, and they were forced into voting for
Yeah.
this for Indonesia to come into power.
That's right. So at the time they called it the Act of Free Choice, whereas we West Papuans call it the Act of No Choice.
Yeah.
And at that point they handpicked 1,100 people out of an entire population to vote whether or not to have Indonesia, to be a part of Indonesia or not.
Yeah.
And they were held at gunpoint to vote.
Wow.
And it was, yeah, I mean, ever since then, in the 1960s
Because this
till
was like a
now,
year later,
over
isn't it?
500,000.
This
Yeah,
was
that's
a year
right.
after the Dutch left, and a year later,
That's right.
these
Yeah.
Indonesians come in, and they like, look, come. What do you say? This is a free voting election, and they take 1,000 people by gunpoint and force them to vote in the Indonesia.
That's right.
To take West Papua.
Exactly. And things have never been the same for our people.
Yeah.
Since that time, over 500,000 people unaccounted for, and we believe more.
Yes.
Studies have been done, and they can say that 500,000, but our people, we believe that there's many more unaccounted for. And as I'm not sure how much but West Papua is made up of many tribes, from the highlands down to the people of the coastal lands to the smaller islands, and And we know those people up in the highlands, there's a war going on there right now that
Yes.
no one knows about,
Yeah.
you know?
The media does not
And
cover
these,
it.
no, not at all. And we are on Australia's doorstep.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We are both right away.
exactly.
That's the most craziest thing about this whole thing is like
Yeah,
how close in proximity we are to West Papua and
exactly.
how it can be ignored for so long, which is
Mm,
unbelievable. It's and the problem is the problem I find difficult is I would not have known the story if I hadn't met you. If I had not
mm,
met you, which is the saddest part about it. I mean, I tell my partner, I tell people around me about it, and
mm.
the only reason I do know the story is because of you guys and because of your fight to give more media attention to the story, which I have to say that it's been unbelievable, but the struggle has not started from you guys. So
That's right.
taking us back to Andy at that
Yeah,
point. So his family are in politics, right?
that's
And
right.
and sorry.
So yeah, so um so my uncle Andy's father was in politics, and eventually they moved from West Papua to Indonesia, to Jakarta. They were based there.
Okay.
And at that point, Andy had recruited, and this is what he did. He recruited band members from West Papua and some from other parts of Indonesia as well. They're kind of like the eastern parts, far east. They're a bit closer towards coming towards our island. So the band was made up. It was quite a big band, with a horn section. And my dad actually hadn't joined at this point.
Okay.
My dad was still living on um, in West Papua on the island,
Yeah.
working his public servant job, but still doing music on the side. Him and his all of his siblings.
Nice.
Um, yeah. So, but at that point, he had recruited all these band members. Um, and they started becoming really popular, but in Indonesia. And I'm
Nice.
talking like they were playing to packed out stadiums of like 100,000 people,
Yes.
and they were becoming huge within Indonesia themselves. And people at that point, not very many West Papuans were living in Indonesia. There was probably students here or there, a few families here and there. But yeah, I mean, their music, not only they were, considered pop music because
Yeah.
rock and roll and all that kind of music was very popular at the time. Late 70s, and the music started becoming like started to have a message behind it.
Because was the music always about freedom fighting? Was it always about that, or did it start off mainly mainstream music in the
I
beginning,
would
like the
say
first few songs that came up from the Black Brothers?
I would say it's always been about the freedom
It's always
fighting,
been about
whether
freedom
people
fighting.
whether people realize it or not. We were
Yeah.
already singing. We were making the music itself was modern, but we were still singing in language,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. With a
And there was
message behind
messages
it.
all behind it.
Yeah.
And yes, maybe only our people understood it, but as they were getting more and more popular and having to, they were creating this music that people were loving because they were up with the times. Either these are guys from the islands, like
Yeah.
self-taught musicians playing, at that kind of level.
Yeah.
And they were just becoming so popular. It was this one song that I think really um, is what really made the Indonesian government see them as a threat, because they weren't just reaching out to our own people. It was starting to spread out to even the poor and the less fortunate within Indonesia themselves.
Yeah.
And there was this song called Hari Kiamat in Indonesia. It basically means the end of the world, and it talks about how, um, it talks about the poor and how the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And yeah, people were starting to really resonate with that message, and they were becoming a threat, like a real threat. Not only what was going on behind like with all the politics, with what Uncle Andy's father was involved in. But yeah, and then the music was coming up as well. So when we spoke to our uncle about like why and how did this all come about, his mission was to get his father out and
So,
another West Papuan politician, you
so
know.
was his father like supportive of the Indonesian government at the time, or was he supportive of the West Papuan movement?
Totally supportive of the West Papuan movement, but he was in a position of power. Like he was
Wow.
in a position in the parliament where you know, obviously there's Indonesians there
Yeah.
within that whole system. So it's not that he's playing both sides, but you know, politics you have to. But
Politics is
deep
politics.
down, he has his mission as well. Like he wants to free his people,
Of course.
you know. And so he was becoming a threat to the government, and the band was also a way for them to. They planned a tour basically from Indonesia into Papua New Guinea. So West Papua and Papua New Guinea are one island with just a border,
Yes.
you know. I know a lot of people hear this story and assume we fled from West Papua itself just across the border, but no, the band actually planned a tour from Jakarta. At that point, my dad was already in the band and living there. My parents were just married, and then they had to plan this tour into Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. Because Papua New
And
Guinea has been independent, and the Indonesians never took over
no, they
Papua
were
New Guinea.
so they yes, that's right. So the Papua New Guinea was colonized by the British and
Okay.
the Germans. Is like it's weird. Instead of that way, like the top half of the island was colonized by the Germans, and the bottom half of the island of Papua New Guinea
Not
were
left and right.
colonized by the
I
British.
thought it was
No,
like
it's
west
like
and
north
east.
and south. No,
Ah,
it's like north and
okay.
south. But eventually, and then they were under Australian administration. That's who they actually got their independence from, the Aussies.
Papua New
but
Guinea.
at the yeah,
Wow.
but at the time, yeah, at the time when Black Brothers had planned their tour, and then they ended up seeking asylum there after the tour had ended, and
Because
the
obviously at
PNG
this
government,
time they're making noise. They're getting things
yeah,
a bit steamed up with the
yeah,
Indonesian government. So they
that's right,
decide, okay, look, for safety reasons, they move to Papua New Guinea.
yeah. It's
Wow.
time to get out. So they had planned a tour to tour the country. So we were like the band members. I wasn't born yet. Actually, only one of my siblings, the eldest brother, was born. But my dad's mum, my mom's dad had taken him back to West Papua. Um, so at that point, it was just whoever, the band members and whoever was married and whoever had kids at the time were there
Okay.
for this tour. And then when the tour ended, that was it. They was seeking asylum there, and they said we can't go back.
To West Papua.
And that's right. So they lived in PNG in Papua New Guinea for 6 months. They helped. They basically helped build the music industry there.
Well, yeah,
Um,
6 months they were
yeah,
still playing. They was making music. And
yeah,
can I ask a
yeah.
question, Andy? At this point, and your father, what are the ages of these men at this time, roughly? I
Mm,
mean,
it would have been. Well, my dad would have been in his 30s,
wow,
early 30s. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
maybe. Yeah, probably 30,
wow.
70s. He was born in 49. Yeah, yeah. He would have been 30, maybe just before he turned 30.
And the music, when you say they had messages behind it, it basically it wasn't like overt, like this is what we're doing, but they had little gems that only the people knew.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why
It's
there's
it's really interesting because this is what we used to always ask because in basically in the islands, especially the islands within Melanesia, they are so popular, very very popular. Their songs are very well known, and it's love songs, you name it, every kind of genre too. They played reggae, they played rock, funk, they played their traditional style, fused it all together. You name it, they did
yeah,
it.
yeah. Because I've
And
listened to the music; it's very fused with lots of different influences.
yeah,
You can hear it.
yeah.
Yeah, it reminds
And
me
so
of
they became really popular there.
it
Mm.
reminds me of a song. just can't remember who sang it. It's I think it's a reggae song that goes, "Give me hope, Joanna, give me
Joanna, give
hope,
me hope.
Joanna."
Joanna. I can't remember who sings it, but it would always play at our family barbecues and stuff.
I didn't know this. I didn't know this until later on in life. That song was, I think, for Nelson Mandela. It was actually for apartheid. So they
Yes.
were
Yep. Yep.
asking, but they knew like apartheid songs and freedom fighting songs could not be played in South Africa. So
Hmm.
they changed the wording. So when they said "Give me hope, Joanna," it was either Joanna was either Johannesburg or something to say that
That
we
is so.
yeah, yeah.
I
So
never knew that. I never knew that.
the song was being played on the radio and everybody knew about it, but people in
Wow.
power did not know that this song was about that.
Yeah. Oh
So
my gosh. You know what? That is exactly what my dad's band did.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's funny because there's songs literally titled with names of women, Anita, Josephine, songs like
I've
that.
heard Anita as well.
Yeah. And if you speak to the, like, there, it sounds like a typical love song, but if you speak to them, to the
Yeah.
band members about it, even till this day, they'll be like, oh,
No.
Anita is not who you think it is. Anita's the motherland,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like, I'll
yeah.
never forget you. All the songs, I'll never forget to you. I'll never forget you. Don't you ever forget me, you know?
Right, right,
Those
right,
kind
right,
of
right. They're talking about the
lyrics.
land. They're talking about the
Yeah.
don't ever forget me because I won't forget you about
Yeah.
where I'm from. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy, man. The reggae influence, they had like a strong reggae influence as well,
Yeah.
which
That's right.
which I love. So do you know what kind of music they were into at that point? Did they have
Oh
any
my gosh.
international
They
like
listen
Bob
to
Marley's?
everything. Well, yeah, of course, Bob Marley,
You can see the influence
Jimmy
of Bob Marley.
Cliff,
Oh wow, yeah,
Jimmy Cliff. Like they even covered a few Jimmy Cliff songs, and I know
yeah,
he actually had the chance to hear them.
yeah.
That's a story that I heard from my uncles,
Jimmy
and
Cliff had the Black Brothers. Yeah,
yeah, like because they covered a couple of his songs.
wow.
Yeah.
What the
Um.
harder they come,
Yes, that one.
the harder they
Yeah.
come, the harder they
Why do they
fall. One and
fall?
all.
One and all. Yep, that one.
My
And
mother
my dad's
loved
actually
Jimmy Cliff.
doing this. My dad's singing the leads and all that, and all
Oh
those
wow,
Jimmy Cliff ones that they covered.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, the reggae influences, of course, like they were listening to everything really. And back then, it was more probably like Bob Marley, you know. And then as the time passed, you know, we were introduced. Like it was my dad and my uncles who introduced us to like Lucky Dube and those kind of artists, and that's literally my childhood. You know,
Wow.
that's still my, those are my go-to songs when I just want to think about the old days.
Yeah, yeah.
All the Lucky Dube songs,
The,
yeah.
the fusion of music, you can hear the music like they were playing music on an international level. When you listen to
Yeah.
music today, it still resonates. It's still like these people were playing music not on a level where it was like a third world country. No, these guys were on an international.
No, and that's
So
the thing. That was just self-taught
so no one is
musicians from the villages.
musical trained or anything like that. No one had like
None of them,
wow.
none of them, all self-taught. And um, sadly, you know, a few of them have passed away now. But even just 2 years ago, my sister and I, we took our uncle's body back to West Papua, the original drummer.
Bless.
And you know, he was Uncle Andy actually recruited him at 11 years old, pretty
Wow.
much.
Wow.
And he was already playing in like, so a lot of them played in what do you call them, like military bands as well.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
like somewhere in the, like I know my dad played. I'm pretty sure it was in the Navy band with some of the other uncles, and you know, different bands, and eventually pulled them all in together. But the drummer, he had been singing and performing from 11,
Wow.
the age of 11. And he's
Talk
like,
about child rebel
yeah,
soldier. He
yeah,
was there
pretty much, exactly,
for the fight of
yeah.
it, man.
Mhm,
So they moved to Papua New Guinea at this point,
mhm,
running away from West Papua. And what happens
yeah.
after that? I mean, does the music
Oh
stop after Papua New Guinea or
no, so from Papua New Guinea, they released tracks there. You know, they even started building a huge following there. And at that point, no one's seen live instruments. This is how full on it was. Like, no, they had, mainly still using traditional instruments. Like, I've met uncles from over there because we've had the chance to go over and perform a few times in Papua New Guinea, and just meeting people who are like legendary musicians now over there, saying, man, we remember the first time we've seen an electric guitar and a keyboard and these, everyone's wondering what this box is on the stage, when it was when the Black Brothers came to play.
Wow.
And
Wow.
they're referring back to that tour, like in the late 70s when they fled Indonesia.
Yeah.
And at that point, so they got to live there for 6 months, and then almost got deported. They had
From Papua
literally
New Guinea?
24, yeah, back to Indonesia. So basically, most countries that we've went through, Indonesia still tried to get to us, or tried to get
Yeah.
to the band. And so at that point, um, I'm not sure exactly who my uncle contacted, but there's a lot of West Papuans living in the Netherlands, in Europe, in Holland,
Right.
because we were Dutch colonized. So there were a few families that had gone over there as well. So he contacted someone over there and they said, just try and get here. We didn't have no visas. Remember my uncle telling us this story of him. He just drove to the Dutch consulate in Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea on a weekend. It wasn't even open, and just by chance met with the ambassador or the
Wow.
consulate as he was coming out of a lift. And these are their lives that are, hanging by a thread, basically. So somehow within 24 hours, he just went there with every single band member, the kids, wives, everything, their passports, left that building, and they were on a flight the next day.
Wow.
Heading over to the Netherlands. Like, it was so close, almost got sent back.
Wow.
And then they ended up in the Netherlands and lived there for 5 years.
Okay, so that's with them. Now in the Netherlands, did they also like make a bit more noise there, or was this like when the band was like
Yeah,
kind of
and
quieting
because
down?
there were other West Papuan families there as well, and like just on a level of like family, not even just politics and stuff. I know it was a big struggle for them with not only just the language barrier, but the environment, not
Yeah, it's
being
integrating
able
with the
to
new
deal with the
culture.
cold. And
Yeah,
yeah,
can
exactly,
imagine.
totally different
Because
culture.
that's European life
um
from from
yeah.
a laid
Yeah,
back West Papuan life and all that
yeah, island
to
life,
yeah,
chilled
the
life,
island life. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, just having to just adapt to all of that. And
Okay.
that's where my two elder sisters were born there. So Leah and Rosa were born in the
In the
Netherlands.
Netherlands. Okay.
Yeah. And um they did live there for 5 years, so they actually got their permanent residency. They were able to stay. um but this is where it goes on. The journey continued after this. So after living there for a few years, still recording music. I think I sent you a couple of videos of them on those
Yeah.
morning shows in the Netherlands. So still very much playing music and making, records over there. And then what happened was another island nation, Vanuatu. So that's where I was born.
Okay.
Um, they had recently become independent from the French.
Right.
So you
Now,
probably have not read about this story on the
no,
internet
no, no,
anywhere.
no, no, not at
Yeah.
all.
So
So
this is what.
Vanuatu is what is part of the islands, or is it
So
close?
if you're looking at um, the Pacific Islands, it's made up of Melanesia, Polynesia, and Micronesia, right? So
You need to
Melanesia is
explain this Melanesia thing to me because I kept
okay.
looking it up as well.
Yeah. All right. So we're in Australia.
Hmm.
The island above us is the island of New Guinea. We're obviously the western half. Papua New Guinea is the eastern half. So from where we are, it will go West Papua, PNG, the Solomon Islands,
Yes.
Vanuatu, New Caledonia,
Right.
and Fiji. That's Melanesia.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Melanesia is that a type of people, or that's just basically the area, or
So that's that part of the Pacific Islands.
right,
So
right.
I'm pretty sure it's like it was meant to mean many islands or many black islands or something like that,
Oh, because I was thinking
right?
melanin and Asians and and
Yeah,
sorry, that was just
yeah.
my stupid way of putting.
No.
Don't worry,
But basically, yeah.
ignore
So
me.
that's Melanesia. That's Melanesia, and then you've obviously heard of places like Tonga, Samoa, Tuvalu, places like that. That's Poland. That's when it becomes Polynesia. Still part of the Pacific, but
Right.
once after Fiji, it basically goes along like that, right? So
Yeah. So
yeah.
from
So Vanuatu's in
Fiji
there.
to West Papua and everything in between, that's Melanesia.
That's Melanesia. Yeah.
Melanesia.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, Vanuatu, they get their independence from the French, and
Mm-hmm.
you guys,
We're living in the Netherlands,
uh-huh,
right?
and the
Okay.
whole
So
band.
all the band and the wives and children and the ones who came along, because there are a couple of band members that decided not to continue with the band when they some of them went back. So I think just like two or three of them. But the main members went on with Uncle Andy, followed Uncle Andy basically. And yeah, so living in the Netherlands, Uncle Andy has some conversations with a political party in Vanuatu, and they are about to have their very first election as an independent nation to vote in their new prime minister.
And what year is this year roughly?
So
What
this
years?
is
This is the
roughly
80s.
83,
Okay.
84,
Okay.
around that time. And they've rehearsed and planned this big tour to help.
Ah.
So
Uh-huh.
so basically what's happened is that the guy that they're campaigning for, Father Waltellini,
Uh-huh.
he has made a promise to the band, basically to
Mhm.
my Uncle Andy and the family, that if they help him win this, Vanuatu will just back us all the way,
Okay.
with our struggle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the band actually left the wives and the children in the Netherlands and went and toured Vanuatu for 6 months. All those little islands.
Okay. And not
Yeah,
touching West Papua, just the islands around.
just all of the little islands of Vanuatu. So
Okay.
they campaigned there for 6 months. They were there. And the guy won, basically, that they were
Okay.
campaigning for, got the position.
Yeah.
And there's a very famous speech within the Pacific, within Melanesia, and it's his speech of when he won that election, and he says, um, Vanuatu isn't free until West Papua is free. We're not truly independent until West Papua is free, until New Caledonia is free, until Kanaki is free.
Okay.
So there's us in New Caledonia within Melanesia that we are still colonized. They're still colonized by the French, New Caledonia, and then there's us with Indonesia.
Yeah.
So at that point, he's basically offered to take us in,
Yeah.
the families. So
Everybody.
everyone was on board. Everyone's very happy to leave the
Yeah. To
cold.
go back.
I
Yeah,
remember
of
my mom
course.
saying, yeah, because it's the next best thing to home.
Yeah,
It's
of
the
course.
environment's the same, the lifestyle
Exactly.
is
The
more what they're
language and
accustomed
the
to.
culture is
Yeah.
very
Well, it's
similar.
different language actually.
Okay. But is it very
Completely
similar?
different. No, it's actually
Not at all.
completely different. No, not at all.
Oh,
So
wow.
but the thing is, they'd lived in Papua New Guinea for that 6 months. They've picked up the language a little bit, so they um, can speak. So it's called Pidgin. You know how you have Pidgin English? So they have
Uh-huh.
their own Pidgin English. All those little islands. It's funny. West Papua's the only one that we speak what we call Papuan Malay, which is
Right.
similar to Bahasa Indonesia. Um, yeah, so they've moved. They decided to move. They made the move to Vanuatu, and according to them, life was. They were loving it there. They really, really loved living there, and the band became. They opened the very first recording studio there. Literally introduced modern music there, and all
Okay.
like people had never seen like these instruments and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, like they had a huge impact in the music world there, but they also made it their home, and Yeah, it was just really sad actually when the parents tell the story of how we had to leave. But yeah, we got there and then I was born.
Yeah.
There's a
Born in
few more kids
Vanuatu,
born
yeah.
along the
Yeah,
way. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so basically, how we ended up having to leave there is the band were because we had helped campaign. I think the band were kind of still involved in politics within Vanuatu as well, and we were supporting and going to. There was still like land title issues and stuff like that, even like after the independence.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were supporting, and there was going to all the demonstrations and stuff like that there. And a riot actually broke out, and some people actually died. And they accused my uncle Andy and the band members of being like these masterminds behind this whole
Now, when you say
movement.
they, are you
And
talking about the band that helped
yeah,
usher
like
into power?
yeah, so the government themselves, the
Turn,
opposition, you know,
yeah,
yeah,
sad.
yeah. So it was a sad time, and I still have those like vague memory of like when the police actually came and took them away.
Wow, wow,
Yeah. And yeah, like they basically were in prison for 6 months in Vanuatu, all the dads.
wow.
Along with like the minister of there's all these ministers, all of them together with the band members.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like they're very famous musicians over there, and they're actually locked up in prison. There's a lot of
Yeah,
funny stories you can
yeah,
imagine. I
yeah.
mean, it's
That's
hard
like
times, but
Jamaica locking up Bob Marley
exactly,
at the
yeah,
height of
yeah,
of his infamy. Sorry.
yeah. So that was it again. We almost got deported again back to Indonesia,
Yeah. Wow.
and that
Which is
was when,
scary.
yeah, it was a very very sad time. Um, but yeah, there was a lot of lobbying being done within like groups in Australia. So we're still very close with some of these. We have these like Australian families that we're very close with, and they were all involved, had a hand in like lobbying the Bob Hawke government at the time
Hmm.
to allow us to accept us in as like refugees.
Right.
But never when there was at that point we were the very very first West Papuan refugees to seek asylum in Australia.
Yeah. And you guys were
Yeah,
political refugees, so it
that's
makes
right.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the band members literally went from prison to the airport. And
Wow.
they were so loved in Vanuatu. Like it's even till now, it's like we always say it's like our second home.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the band members went straight from prison to the airport to Sydney.
To Sydney, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. So we flew
Wow.
into Sydney, and then like the mums and the kids, we flew out like a week later
Wow.
and met
And at
up in
this
Sydney.
point,
And
everybody has left the Netherlands and everybody settled in Vanuatu. So at this
yeah,
point, this was your home. Vanuatu was your home at this
Vanuatu was
point.
our home. And even to this day, and before dad passed away, he only ever had fond, like beautiful memories there. And he would always speak. So yeah, he just loved the place because it was the next best thing basically. Um, after being able like living in West Papua, it was same kind of people, and the people there are beautiful. And he had our family in particular. There was a family that lived on this little island that you could just catch a water taxi to from Port Vila, the main island,
Yeah.
and they adopted my dad as one of their own. Gave him land and everything over there. So it was a really sad time. And we all do, we all have a special place in our hearts for Vanuatu
Wow.
and their
Okay.
people. And if you see, without getting too much into the politics, but if you see the movement today, at a government from grassroots to a government level, Vanuatu is the only country that supports our struggle.
Wow.
Like from people, ordinary people to they have, it's in their policy. Either it doesn't matter which side of the opposition it is, like
Because I mean,
which side of the government.
they've changed governments from that time, and
Yeah,
they've improved
yeah,
and
of
stuff like
course.
that. And
And they've always backed us 100%.
wow, okay,
Yeah. And a lot of that, they say is because of that foundation that the band had built with Father Waltellini and that whole mission at the start.
yeah, yeah,
Until this day that they've carried it's all the big important meetings that happen amongst our leaders and everything. Vanuatu usually hosts them.
yeah, yeah.
And this is like the Prime Minister inviting them there for
Okay,
these things. Yeah.
wow. So at this point, they've left Vanuatu, they've come to Sydney, and that's the whole band and family and everybody, right?
Yeah. So
Um,
we were being sent to Canberra to move to Canberra, the capital.
yeah. What was the move
Mm.
in Canberra? Was it people that you knew there, or
Yeah, and I
West
think
Papuans there?
because there was mainly I think because it was the capital city and there was people lobbying for us, and that's where they decided to settle us in
Okay,
Canberra. Yeah.
okay, yeah. And
So
then
then it was all about Aussie life till now.
so that's when you guys all became Aussies, eh?
Yeah. Been
um,
such a journey, hey.
yeah, because and in Canberra, like, so the band is basically at this point they're taking a rest from it, or are they still like trying to get back into things? Because this is what is this like the 90s or this is late 80s?
This is late 80s. So we arrived in Australia in 1988, November 1988.
Wow. Okay.
And yep, the band were pretty active within the first few years. Um,
Mm.
Playing big shows but always in support of like the
The
Aboriginal
movement.
land rights and things like
Oh
that,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yes, yes,
So they
yes.
had, they'd done a few things with,
The
played
native,
some big shows. Yeah.
yeah, the
Like with
native
like
people
Jimmy
of here.
Barnes and like Midnight Oil, like these bands that were they were known to be supporting the Indigenous mob here in
Yes.
Australia. So, obviously we could relate to their struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Very similar. Yeah.
and at this point they were still being, let's be real, they're still not being treated
No,
very
up to
well at
today.
all in their own land. Yeah, up to
Yeah, up
today.
to
But
today.
you can imagine back then, like, you'd want to say some things have gotten better, but back then as well, it was very, they'd only just had the right to vote,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
not that long ago, since
Because
like from when we
everybody
got there.
because everybody is struggling with the issue of racism, and I
Yeah,
mean
absolutely.
taking us back as well. I mean that's where your father and Andy's band, that's where they got the name, the Black Brothers. Was there like a lot of racism happening with the Indonesians towards the West Papuans at that time as well, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
hence the name?
yeah, yeah. There was a lot of it going on. Well, they looked at us as very like primitive people,
Yeah.
and our people, and even just for my mum, like she left her brother. She was lucky to not to get out, but they were trying to give her a better education outside of West Papua, and her brother was already a university student, so they took her. But she remembers just being stared at all the time by people they'd never seen like dark skinned people before.
Wow. Wow.
And just having that and not feeling she did not fit in at school, it's very tough times. But Indonesia have always just looked at us in that way. And you've probably heard most recently, like with
Yeah, I
the
was just about to
riots
bring that
last
up
year, the
as well.
uprising last year was all
Oh,
fueled and
racism.
based off racism remarks that are thrown at us by Indonesian law enforcement, the people who are supposed to be upholding the law.
Yeah, in this day and
Calling
age.
us monkeys
Yeah,
still.
yeah, in this
And
day
these
and
are
age.
students who are, there are a lot of West Papuans in Indonesia now with on scholarships at universities, but still want to practice their right,
Yeah,
their freedom of speech. They call themselves a democratic
it makes me
country.
it makes me so sick because also just to relate to it, like even with us in Africa, how we get like the um, the the racism you got from apartheid and the white South Africans and the
Mm-hmm.
Boers
Mm-hmm.
and the Rhodesians and all that. They would do stuff like that. They would still call us any black person a monkey and all that.
Mm. Yeah.
And it only, I would say, maybe the last 15 years, last
Mm-hmm.
15 to 20 years is when we actually, in my country, in Malawi, we
Mm-hmm.
started taking stands against it and getting to a point where we deport anybody that's getting caught using these racial terms.
Yeah,
So
and so they should
we've come
be.
a long way. But to
Mm-hmm.
hear about this happening, was it last year? This happened, or this year?
It was just the 1 year anniversary of it on Monday.
That was last year.
Yeah.
I mean, this is happening
And it
in
was
this
on,
day and
yeah,
age
in this day and
in
age.
West Papua. So there's so this is basically the reason why the name the Black Brothers came up, is because they were proud to be black,
There,
and the
absolutely. Yep.
movement was about being black and being strong as well.
Yep.
So fast forward to Canberra. At what point? At what point did the lead singer's daughters decide, we're gonna take on this, we're gonna take on this task?
Oh, I'm telling you, it didn't happen easily.
Mm,
And as you can imagine, living from country to country, and then, for me, I think I was lucky. I was still quite young when we moved here. Um,
yeah,
but we were just having to adapt to another way of life again. And so music wasn't really our priority. It was more about fitting in and how trying to get by. Like even in somewhere like Canberra in Australia, there was still not very many coloured people around, like
yeah,
people of colour. We
yeah,
were still the only black kids at school, you know?
yeah,
And there was maybe like one or two others literally in the whole school. And we all went to school. Most of us kids went to school together, like with the cousins and stuff. And, we experienced a lot of that as well.
yeah.
But, obviously
Oh, but
coming
wait,
from that musical
apparently
background,
Australia doesn't have racism. I've heard some.
I really think I'm grateful to call this place home, but they, and they show it just in the way they treat the Indigenous people here.
Yeah,
If they can't even treat them right, who are we?
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
But yeah, going back to what you asked in terms of the music and how we ended up, we were born into it, so we were always, especially with my dad, we were a very church going family. So dad, um, you know, we were always singing at home, the three of us. He always had his guitar, and always making sure that we were singing in language. So it's funny because we went back, we can sing all the songs, but we didn't know how to speak the language, but we could sing. But that was just his way, and I guess our ways of keeping that part of things alive. But yeah, in terms of us really trying to use the music and using it as a platform, it didn't really happen until he passed away, which is quite sad.
wow, okay,
Um, and it was more like the wake up call that we had because we
yeah,
were just living your normal, we grew up in Australia, we went to high school, after school we found our jobs, we were living a pretty comfortable life. We were born into the movement. We always knew that those things are happening to our people.
yeah,
But in terms of what we were doing about it, it took a while. It was a journey,
yeah.
And dad
And it
passed
wasn't
away
something that
15 years
was.
ago. So
It sounds like it wasn't something that was forced on you guys or anything. It sounds like something that just grew organically
yeah,
from yourselves within your own heart. So nobody
yeah,
was like, "Oh, you guys should do this" or anything like that. You guys were like, it's something
yeah,
that you felt.
yeah. Honestly, I think that's one thing that, you know, I can say our parents, they didn't they didn't push us, to play music and do music. We would, part of our culture is singing.
Yeah,
And, when we all gather, we always sing. So it's more like in terms of pushing us to do it for the struggle, we were never felt pressured. It was more survival was happening
Wow.
because we did come to Australia with, our parents didn't know much English, no jobs, went from playing music to coming to a country like this, where it's like you have to start from the bottom, picking
Yeah.
fruit and things like that, and
Yeah.
you know, eating crepes for dinner,
Yeah.
pancakes, whatever, flour and water mixed.
Yeah.
We were doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was more like, as much as the music was going to continue, we had to survive as well here,
Yeah.
you know. And so it wasn't at that point when Dad passed away. And our dad passed away quite suddenly, as well, very unexpectedly
Because
in
that was
Canberra.
2005, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
2005,
How old was he at that
and
point?
he was 55.
55. Wow. So you're still
Yeah,
fairly young. Still fairly young.
yeah. Well, It was just before my 20th birthday. Actually,
Wow.
it was like a
Okay.
week before my 20th birthday. So yeah, but it was at that moment. It just like was like a big slap in the face. Like, hello, you guys are here for a purpose,
Yeah.
And because we had not been to West Papua, um, for one of many reasons, a little bit scared, not unsure if we were citizens already at this point, and only Dad had gone back. Thank God he had gone back twice. He had the chance to go back to West Papua twice and reunite with his family
Wow.
after like 30 years. After fleeing
In
for that long.
exile. Yeah.
Exactly, after living in exile for that long. And he actually went back just that 2 months before he passed away. So
Wow.
that was, it was hard, very hard for his family to accept, but, he had that time, he got to go back. So he
In
always,
a way,
always
maybe
said to us,
even got some closure from it as well. It's funny how life works in that sense.
yeah, like, you know, he felt because we were all older. My mum and dad actually had another. You've met my little brother Nathaniel,
Yes.
but we were all older, and then mum and dad had another child.
Yeah.
My dad was 50, and it was like, okay. And I was the youngest at that point. I was 15 when my little brother was born, and as we were getting older, my dad was he was really longing to go back home
Yeah.
a lot. And he'd brought it up a few times to all of us and mum, and we were like, I think I'm ready to go home. I want to be home. Just kept talking about going home. He's like, the girls and Ronnie, they're older now. Maybe we can just go back with the little one.
Yeah.
So, but in the end, we ended up, his wish always was that if anything was to happen to him, no matter where it is we're living, where he passes away, we have to take his body back home. So
To
it
West
was
Papua.
yeah, back to our island, Biak Island. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, we took his body back home, and it was a very bittersweet experience, honestly, because it was a very sad time taking him back, but it was also our first time to see our motherland,
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
and meet
That's
our
a heavy
family, our
emotional
parents. Mm-hmm.
journey
Yeah.
to undertake as
And that
well.
was like him passing away meant that there was like 30 of us who escorted his body back home
Wow.
to West Papua. And that's a lot of us kids as well, like of our generation, that none of us had been back at all. Even some of the uncles, the band members, they hadn't been back.
Yeah.
So him passing away they'd already been living in exile for 30 years by that time,
Wow.
over 30 years. So
Yeah. And at this
yeah, it
point, you
was,
guys are feeling like you need to carry the legacy with you.
oh yeah,
And is that what
yeah,
influenced the formation of the Black Sisters at this point?
definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
So we got back after burying him. Not only had we just witnessed firsthand, okay, Indonesia's really taken over this. Like we actually got to see it this time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then Dad's passed away, it was a big, big wake up call for us that, you know, our lives and what our parents had sacrificed was not for no, there was a very big purpose behind it, that it can't just end there,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It's something that has to continue. You know, we don't want this. It's not the best legacy, as in terms of our struggle. We want to be free. We want our people to be free,
Mm.
and but we know we have a job to do
Yes. Yes.
in whatever way that we can, whether it's through music or other forms. We have to do our part.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in terms of the Black Sisters, so what year do you believe that you guys were actually formed, or when did you make a decision to become the Black
Um.
Sisters?
So we moved to Melbourne a few years after Dad passed away. So about 3 years after Dad passed away, we made the decision. Let's move. We knew there was a little West Papuan community here already.
Mhm.
Um, and we just thought, let's move. We had one uncle that lived in Melbourne, and we thought, let's let's really try and get involved with the community and just do some more for our cause,
Yeah.
whether it be through music or just joining the community and seeing what we can do. And when we moved here, it just opened a lot of doors. We met people, a lot of people that and other fellow musicians as well that that knew our story and knew about what was happening in West Papua and gave us their platform as well
Yeah.
to be able to share our message.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
look, it's not like you guys were just getting like free support. You guys do play your part. I mean, your voices, you the way you guys sing. I've heard you guys sing with so much passion. You got beautiful voices, all three of you, and so it's warranted for someone to say, "Look, it's not like someone just saying that, oh, like, I'm just gonna give these girls a help because they're connected." No, they actually got the talent for it, which is commendable as well, because it's not just one part of it, you know. So
thank you, brother.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think we were just because we were born into it, and music's just always been a huge part of our family. And literally every single one of my dad's siblings are musicians,
yeah.
every single one of them.
Can't
And
avoid
he's
it,
like
huh?
he's like one of 12 in the whole family. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
when we're there, it's everyone's just playing music. It's
Wow.
awesome.
No, I've been to
But
your
yeah,
houses and stuff. Like, there's always a guitar is never far away.
yeah,
Someone
yeah,
can
yeah,
pull out a
exactly.
guitar and just start
Yeah.
playing music. So, in terms of the Black Sisters, how because you guys have performed, you have done some music with some
Yeah,
musicians that
so when we moved here, that's how it all happened. We just started we joined a little group that we were called Tabura. It was with
okay.
some other West Papuan friends and a PNG brother named Irie Leke. One of the huge supporters of our movement through his music as well. And he's an amazing producer and everything. So we started doing shows as that band. And eventually everyone was just like, okay, you guys, and it was actually our guitarist at the time who made a joke about it and said, you guys have to call yourself as the Black Sisters. And we laughed it off. We literally laughed it off for a year. We laughed it
Yeah,
off.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
But then it made
I
sense.
think it was, yeah. And then after a trip, we had a trip, I think, to Papua New Guinea. We did some shows there. And then we came back and we were like, actually, we are the Black Sisters. We're the
Yeah.
daughters of the Black brothers and we're real sisters too. So,
But most great names comes out of that, nicknames. You look at people, Nipsey Hussle, Damian Marley, Damian Junior Gong. You
yeah,
have the name Junior Gong was a nickname. I
Junior
think it was
Gong.
a security guy saying, just let Junior Gong come in. So
Yeah, exactly.
sometimes you just have to gravitate to what's given to you. you know,
Yeah.
that's excellent.
Yeah, but it
Excellent.
started off as a joke, and then we were like, no, this is actually us. We are the next generation of the Black brothers. We're sisters and we're Black,
Yes, yes.
you
And
know?
you still pushing the movement forward, giving
Yeah.
more attention to this movement of you guys, of
Yeah.
what's
So,
happening in West Papua.
yeah. And honestly, I really have to mention her because I'm not sure if you know Natalie Rice.
Mm,
So she was in a band called Blue King Brown, a reggae band out of Melbourne.
okay.
And it was through her that she asked us to do backing vocals for her. But in every single set that she'd do, she'd dedicate a part of her set where she tells our story. And
Wow. Okay.
The and she also the bands learnt just we do a little section of one of my dad's band songs called Border Crosser, and we do it in just their kind of this their style, you know.
Yeah.
But she
Yeah.
tells our story and we do a little song, and that she took us on tour with her around, you know, like Canada, Europe, you know, America,
Wow.
parts of Asia. You know, we got to travel and really spread our message around.
Nice.
And that, you
Nice.
know, that's been a huge blessing. We've, you know, we've been able to link up with different artists and toured along, you know, Julian Marley, you know, we've got to tour along some really awesome bands as well
Wow.
and open for some really amazing bands like UB40 and,
Wow.
you know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Performing with
And
them
just,
as well. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And just being able to, just to share the stage with those artists that you've grown up with as well. It's been an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Grown up listening to, I should say,
Yeah.
and just being able to spread our message as well. And they hear our message as well, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
As for the message, I mean, there might be a few people that are going to be um, listening to this. What? Because this is the thing that kind of frustrates me is even when I did the research and all that, it's painful what's going on in West Papua. It's
mm,
really painful, and
hmm
it's one of those things where it's just another bit of noise that's happening on the internet. But what can we do as individuals apart from just sharing more of what's going on? Is there anything else that we as individuals, instead of just um,
mm,
being keyboard warriors,
yeah,
what is it there?
exactly. And you know what? There is, that's a question we get asked all the time. And one thing that I will say that even though it's such a simple answer is talk to people about it. Talk to people about it. We still need that. If you, just like you said, you met me, you never even heard about
Yeah,
West
yeah,
Papua or that part
yeah.
of the world or that even black. I remember you specifically telling me um, how similar we were in terms of like just the
Culture.
way
Yeah,
our culture.
yeah,
And we're like from two different parts of the world, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's lots
And
of similarities.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
to what
But
happens to
you have
Africans
to,
as well.
yeah, especially with this Black Lives Matter and that whole movement, there are black people as well on this part of the world who are suffering,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And we need that attention as well. We still need people to know about who we are,
yes,
what's happening there.
yeah,
So you as a small thing that you can do is to talk about it to people.
yeah,
You can
yeah.
also write to your local members of parliament. You know, we still encourage that because we'll never give up with those kinds of things. Even though it might seem like it's falling on deaf ears, there are still people fighting at that level. You know, we spoke about it before, but we've got, you know, there's political parties within like in the Free West Papua movement that are, you know, lobbying the United Nations, and we still need that support. For me, I would say if you can find out and a way to support them, and everything goes back to money
Yeah,
for the movement, especially coming from where we are, where we don't have the support of, you know, we've got the largest gold mine in West Papua where we live like the poorest people.
that's the part that hurts the most, because this is not only a racial injustice. This is also an environmental injustice at the same time, because when you look at the copper mining, when you look at Corindo and
Mm,
Posco, some of the companies that are involved with the palm oil in
yeah.
West Papua. If you guys, if there's people out there, if you know anything about fair trade, there is nothing. There's nothing that is justifiable about what these companies are doing, because
Mm-hmm.
they are not investing in the people. They
No.
are they're buying like a hectare of rich land for like $4 a hectare,
Mm-hmm.
$4 or $5 a hectare. Um,
Yeah.
and nothing is going back to the people. The people are they're trying to stand up for their rights, and they are still being just constantly hammered down, and nobody nobody is hearing their voices. And that's the
Yeah,
reason why the Black Sisters are in existence until today.
that's
Because,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
that's it. That's another big thing, the way that they have raped our land,
yes,
all their natural resources. We have got, our country, West Papua, is rich in natural resources. And these big companies have just
yeah,
exploited our land. And our people live well below, well below the poverty line.
yeah,
Coming from, a land that's so rich, we don't even have basic healthcare, especially in those places in the highlands where it's not an easy places to get to. We have those, that terrain where you can't just, even just flying there is pretty risky as well.
yeah,
So you can imagine there's all these people, there's atrocities happening,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. For
But
anyone,
people still need to know. We need to speak up about this. We need to continue talking about it to people.
yeah,
You need to find out how you can support the movement. There are activists living here where we are in Melbourne who are part of um, a group called the United Liberation Movement of West Papua, and they were formed to unite all the different factions. As you know, there are always going to be different political factions, but there's a united one
yes,
called the United Liberation Movement of West Papua. And if you can find ways to support them, they have to travel. They need to travel to get to meetings in New York, overseas. And we have like key members living in Melbourne. There's Benny Wendar living in Oxford in the UK.
hmm,
These people, we need to, you can support them financially too. There are
yeah.
ways that you can help so that these people can travel and do the lobbying that needs to be done.
And
We're,
as as um as Australian government, I mean, I would definitely have thought the Australian government would have stepped in at some point, but I mean, they are in full support of the Indonesian government. They turn a blind eye to what's happening,
yeah,
um, to you know, basically the slaughter of West Papuans by the Indonesian
yeah.
army,
They
and they
train,
turn,
they train, they train that the anti-terrorist squad in West Papua. Those are the squad that they send. The Indonesian anti-terrorist squad is who they send into West Papua
well,
to deal with us separatists, they call us.
now as an Australian or any Australian that's out there, if you're going to listen to this podcast, look, make noise, start spreading the word, because if the Australian government took the side of the people, we'd have a different outcome. We'd have a
That's
completely
right.
different outcome. But if we're going to keep on just turning a blind eye, and because here's the thing that's annoying is you're gonna go to Bali, you're gonna go to all these places, you're gonna go to
Yeah,
Vanuatu, you're gonna go to the islands for your little holiday and stuff like that.
yeah,
Uh, Meanwhile, right there, right in the middle of all of this, there is a country
mhm,
that's suffering. So
yeah,
how do we accept these injustices just to keep on sorry, just to keep on happening, and just keep on turning a blind eye? So people out there, I please encourage you guys to make more
yeah.
noise, whether it's
Make more noise,
locally.
call out the Australian government for their
Exactly,
ignorance.
exactly.
Remind your fellow Australians and people that we are just 250 kilometres north of
200
Queensland.
kilometers.
That's closer from here to Canberra.
250 kilometers.
Yeah, from
I mean,
northern part
how
of
does that make
Queensland.
sense? How does that make sense? 250 kilometers
Exactly.
away from I mean, you can go and help countries that are far away and
Yes,
beyond, but a country that's
that's right.
250
Your own
kilometers
backyard.
away, that's your own backyard. That is
Yeah,
your own backyard. The
that's
success of
right.
West Papua will be the success of Australia as well, definitely.
That's right.
And we
They
pray
helped
for a
East
day.
Timor, and everyone said East Timor would never. Everyone said East Timor would never get their independence. Just as
Yeah,
they say to us all the time, there's too much at stake, but we'll never give up.
yeah.
I'll
and
tell
and,
you that.
and that's the thing about West Papua, the forests and everything, environmentally, you guys got so many different like animal species and all of that.
Hmm.
That's all
Yeah,
being
it's crazy.
that's all being chopped down. So
Yeah,
we, if the Australian government gets involved, they can help preserve that, so that
exactly.
one day in the future, as an
Yeah,
Australian, you can go to West Papua and experience the beauty of that country. But
that's
for
right.
now, you cannot do that. For now, you cannot do that.
That's right.
So it is very
Yeah,
important for people out there.
yeah.
Petra, we've gone over an hour.
I know. These conversations can't be short. But I'll
That's the
tell you
thing.
what, though,
Hmm.
you ask what you can do as well. You're doing it with your
Thank you.
podcast.
Thank you. And this is
You
the
know,
reason why.
any space that you can give a voice to people like me, and there's many of us with
Yeah.
this struggle,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
100%. 100%. And that's what we're here for. That's what Wise,
Yeah,
Gifted, and Black is for.
that's
Is
it. And we
because
support each other.
Black people going through struggles. This is exactly what it is.
Yeah,
And we're trying to educate people about this. But
yeah.
at the same time, we're celebrating the Black sisters and the Black brothers. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for coming through to the podcast. I hope after all this craziness is done, we can get to hear the Black sisters performing again.
Yes.
Please, God be with us on
Yeah.
this
We're
one. Yeah?
working on a little bit of music at the moment. So
Nice.
hopefully
Perfect,
when it comes
perfect.
out, I'll send it over.
Beautiful. Petra, thank you for your time. Thanks for
Thank you, my
coming
brother
through to
Najil.
Wise, Gifted, and Black. And as the West Papuan says, thank you, Mache.
Yeah. Thank you, Pache. And don't forget to say Papua Merdeka.
Papur Merdeka. I hope I said that
Papua
nicely.
Merdeka.
Papur Merdeka.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you. Good night.